Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones was here. Ms. Stevens? Mr. Brady? There is a quorum. Also elect the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So just for the record, this is the Education, Environment, Sustainability Committee meeting, Wednesday, June 19th. And do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one is signed in.
We do have minutes, however, from June 5th, our last meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
First and second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes approved, no public comment. It's kind of a full schedule, so I want to move with this. Let the record reflect Councilman Jones is here at the beginning of the meeting. And the first item, actually two items, maybe overlap with Health and Human Service discussions, maybe not. It relates to workforce and the Educational Assistance Act that the County Council put in place. And so the first item referred is 2019-0140. Can I have that read for the record?
Resolution number 2019-0140, making awards on requisition number 44122 to various providers for comprehensive case management and employment program, employment, education, and training services for young adults in connection with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act for the period 7/1/2019 through 6/30/2021.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
There we go. Good afternoon, Frank Brickner from the Department of Workforce Development. We're presenting to you contracts for approval. Workforce Development and Job and Family Services partnered together to issue a competitive RFP integrating funding from both the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, and TANF to offer more coordinated, individualized services for young adults. You may recall that a few months ago, it was the same RFP. We awarded a contract to Youth Opportunities Unlimited to do summer employment. This is part of the same RFP. This identifies year-round services starting July 1st of 2019. We would like to recommend contractual awards to Cuyahoga Community College, Linking Employment Abilities and Potential, Ohio Guidestone, the Centers for Families and Children Towards Employment, and Youth Opportunities Unlimited. The awards will total $10.2 million, with TANF providing $5.8 million and WIOA providing $4.4 million. As part of the RFP, we received 13 proposals and a team of reviewers consisting of staff both from Workforce and Job and Family Services, workforce board members, and community stakeholders reviewed and rated, and as a result, these 6 organizations are recommended for funding. The purpose of funding is to help low-income young adults get the training and supports necessary to enter a career and break the poverty cycle. These programs will serve low-income young adults between the ages of 16 and 24. Now, the services that can be provided are dependent upon an individual's unique needs, but they will include such things as career training, including college or credential training, paid and unpaid work experiences, career coaching, tutoring, supportive services like transportation, work-related clothing, and counseling and mentoring. It is anticipated that approximately 4,000 young adults will benefit each year. And there are federal performance measures attached to the youth contracts, and we did include some performance payment points in the contracts to help us realize success in achieving those measures. And the measures are federal defined, relate to employment or post-secondary education, where the expectation is 2/3 of the youth will be successful when they exit, and credential attainment, that 55% of the youth will obtain a credential. And we have providers present and other staff for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Non-committee members? Councilman Miller?
Madam Chair, Director Brickner, could you describe how the success or lack thereof of this program is going to be measured? What are the benchmarks? What statistics are going to be kept, and what measures do you have about recent performance in the last year or two?
Sure. You know, I'm pleased to report that for the WIOA measures across the board, we have met or exceeded all federal measures. And the measures are related to education or employment. So employment in this would be that anybody who is enrolled, when you touch them, when you determine they're eligible, when you provide some individualized services, they're counted. So when you start serving them, when you exit them, at least 2/3 of them have to find employment or go on to some type of post-secondary education. Another measure is tied to median earnings, that when they get a job, what are they earning? That's only $11,000 a year. We easily exceed that. That's a federal defined one. There's also the credential attainment, recognizing, trying to get youth who are lacking some skills in some type of credential program, be it college or other type of skill that they learn, an occupational skill, and get a recognized credential. And when we serve them, 55%. There's also a measure that says that no less than 25% of the WIOA funds will be spent on work experience, because the goal is to expose young people to the world of work. So that we have to meet and exceed, and all of these programs have a work experience component to it. I think that, one of the things we like about these programs is there's a lot of partnerships in between the contracted agencies. Youth Opportunities Unlimited, for instance, is recognized for having a very strong work experience program. So I know they've partnered with a couple other providers here, like the centers, I think Guidestone and Tri-C, to assist them to find work experience for some of their individuals. But those are how we measure. There's inputs in the contract regarding numbers to be served, but there's also outputs related to what percentage of individuals will be successful, and those are federally defined.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So you mentioned we will reach 4,000. Is that each year annually?
Yes.
Okay, and that $11,000 minimum that the federal government sets, is that for a year or
That's a year.
What's the time frame?
It's a very small threshold for a year. So when they take a look at youth working in the system, it's after they're exited, are they making $11,000 a year?
Okay, and how are we defining youth? What ages?
Youth are defined young adults, not youth.
Okay.
It's defined as the ages of 16 to 24.
16 to 24. And we have six recipients of this particular award. So did they apply individually?
Yes.
Okay. And how did we determine how much money each agency was given?
Well, first we had the teams of reviewers who looked at their proposals. The proposals, we first looked at their budgets, we reviewed, we came up with, these are the agencies that we would look forward to moving forward with contracting with. Then, of course, that the amount requested was way higher than what was available. So we brought in all the agencies, I think at least once, if not twice, to talk about what their true capacity was. Maybe encourage collaboration, saying, hey, maybe if you're not, this agency may be more skilled at getting summer work experience. Can we put that in their budget as opposed to your budget? So we had some discussions, finally got down to what we truly had available to work with of the federal funds. But it was negotiation and really talking to the agencies about what their capacity was.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Jones.
How long has this contract been in place?
WIOA has been around, I think, 4 years. We've had, there's been workforce programs for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, but CCMEP, I think last time there was a award, TANF awarded separate youth contracts and WIOA awarded separate. And it seemed to make sense because they're similar eligible. If someone's TANF eligible, they'll be WIOA eligible. So we decided to come together. I think the TANF money's been around for 3-4 years too.
And these 6 providers all RFP'd individually, as you said?
Yes.
Were there other bidders?
Yes.
How many?
There were 13 proposals we received.
Are any of these 6 new?
The Centers for Families and Children are new to serving young adults. They're known to the adult system, but this is new to serving young adults.
Okay. Thank you.
Just for clarification, the TANF dollars are not greater than that which used to be separately bid out, right? Or
No.
It's the same amount, so
Yes.
nothing, we're not taking money away from other TANF
Right.
needs. It's the same quantified, and it's just combined with the RFP that went out, or?
Correct.
And do you feel this is working better to combine and somehow really leverage?
Absolutely. I think we'll make it easier for the providers, so they don't have to bid to 2 separate systems. You have to deal with 2 separate contracting processes. We have a joint eligibility document. So, yes, I think this will make it much easier to the providers, and we can use funds to our benefit. For example, WIOA has a 25% limit. A minimum on work experience. We can use TANF for some of the other things and ensure we meet the WIOA limit.
And I asked this last time, whether both dollars could be used for the same youth or a young adult.
Yes.
And the answer was yes.
Yes. The
Good.
state encourages braiding of funds, and we intend to do that.
Okay, great. All right, so are there any questions? This contract is due to begin 7/1. I would ask the committee if they would be okay with this, going to second reading suspension, since the contract's due to start. Okay, so I'm going to move this to the full, make a motion to move this resolution to the full council meeting with a recommendation for approval under second reading suspension. Okay,
Second.
thanks. Okay, so
Thank
we'll
you.
have this on the agenda next week.
Thank you.
And then the next item?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, you need to vote.
Oh, sorry, so we're just moving along. A trend to have consolidation of power at the top, but okay. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. I'll remember we're a Democratic committee.
Resolution number 2019-0141, making awards on requisition number 44417 to various providers for various services in connection with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act for various time periods beginning 7/1/2019.
Thank you. The first item dealt with the young adults. This deals with the older adults. So Workforce Development issued a competitive RFP using the federal WIOA dollars to provide services to economically disadvantaged adults and dislocated workers and to assist businesses with their human capital needs. The Department of Workforce recommends contractual awards to United Labor Agency, Towards Employment, and Vantage Aging. A total of 7 proposals were received, and once again, a team of reviewers consisting of staff, board members, and other community stakeholders took part in the review and rating of the proposals, and these were the 3 recommended agencies. And we went through the same process as we did for our youth. When we came down to these 3 agencies, we had requests far exceeding what we had available, so we called them in once, twice to talk about capacity and what we had available and negotiated the amounts in front of you. Towards Employment, he has a contract, he has 2 parts. They will serve reentry individuals as well as individuals at the county jail, pre and post release at the county jail. We anticipate they will serve 300 per year. I think 100 reentry at their offices and 200 at the county jail. Services include job readiness training, career planning, job placement and retention services. And we're getting some county funding also to share in the cost of this. And I think it's about $300,000 of the contract. The remainder is WIOA. This is an allowable service. WIOA allows us to pick some barriered populations and provide enhanced services. The second contract is with United Labor Agency, and there are three different areas that ULA assists us with. They serve as the one-stop operator at 1910 Carnegie, and they work with coordinating the work of all mandatory partners who are present on site. They also assist job seekers. We serve an estimated 5,000 WIOA enrolled adults and dislocated workers, and they assist with providing individualized services like assessment, career planning, and referral to occupational skills training to provide support, to help support developing skilled workers and matching them to employers. I will say that not only does ULA provide staff at 1910 Carnegie, but they also provide staff in the community. They're currently staffing 10 libraries and 2 rec centers. So we're going to people, making it more easy for people to get services where they live. And then the third area is they assist employers with their human capital needs. They assist with the matching of an employer's job opening with candidates registered in WIOA. They provide recruitment events for an employer or a group of employers and do pre-screening of candidates. I wanted to point out that in their contract recommendation, there's $700,000 dedicated to something called on-the-job training and supportive services. This helps an employer who may be a little reluctant to hire an individual because they are lacking some skills, that we can pay for that training, pay half the wages for a period of time where that individual can get those skills. So I wanted to point out that there is training embedded in that contract amount. And then the third contract is with Vantage Aging. They provide some staffing to the one-stop system to assist job seekers. Their area of expertise is individuals 50 and over. They had a name change a year ago. You may recognize them as Mature Services. And they help also with some administrative support.
Questions? Oh, wait, okay. Miller Jones?
Mine is quick. What is the age range on this program?
Individuals can be 18 or over. So even though the young adult program can serve individuals to up to age 24, we have the opportunity to serve anyone who is an adult 18 and over.
And the Vantage program definitely includes some seniors, is that right?
Oh, yes, they definitely include seniors.
Okay. Okay.
You mentioned that Towards Employment provides the job seeker services for those in the reentry population. And you also mentioned within the county jail as well.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Help me understand what's happening there. Is anyone from Towards Employment here today?
Good afternoon. I'm Robin Smalley, Director of Programs for Towards Employment.
Yes, good afternoon. Help us visualize what you actually do at the county jail in terms of job seeking assistance.
Okay. So I have 3 staff members, 2 additional to join them that are currently providing services at the Bedford Heights facility. Okay. We were in the Euclid facility, which the intention was for women to be served at that jail, but due to some of the recent situations with the county and the jail, that's been put on hold. So we're in the Bedford Heights facility. Staff member is a case manager that works with individuals that are doing their time or being completing their sentences here in Cuyahoga County at the Bedford Heights jail. It's a male facility. Case manager meets with them and does pre-employment assessment as well as social and behavioral assessment to see how long they're there, what the circumstance that brought them there, and begin working on a reentry plan so that when they come out, there's something in place for them to continue the path that they've started. They then can engage in a 60-hour job readiness training program, which includes soft skills as well as working on all those aspects of being a good employee and how you would go about being able to obtain that position. We also have an employment and retention specialist that meets with them prior to release, again, working on that reentry plan and establishing that relationship so that when they are released, their next appointment is coming towards employment and to continue on that career pathway model.
So all of this is done in the window of which they're there. Some potentially
6 months to a year could be incarcerated.
You find something. Obviously, some are having trials and could potentially be.
No, Councilman, no. The individuals that come into this program, they're referred through a process at the county jail where they have to be within that window of time frame, 6 months to 12 months for release. And they also have to have all their court matters finished. These are individuals that are actually providing or serving their sentence locally versus being sent
Got you.
elsewhere.
You mentioned you're no longer in the county jail. When were you last in the county jail?
Well, I do have staff that go to the downtown county facility. This program originated at the downtown facility. It was a little bit challenging just because of space and transitioning of inmates that were going to be involved in the program from different floors and pods. So about 3 years ago, the Euclid facility was opened, which allowed for, I don't know if you've been in the facility, but it's an 83-bed facility, and it really is structured where there is a training room that's been set up, and it made it very easy for the inmates to come and receive the services there. Going out to Bedford, it's the same thing. The facility is set up and structured so there's workshop space for the individuals to come in and easily transition into their training.
You also mentioned you do a behavioral assessment.
It's a social behavioral. We want to understand, what's their background? I mean, what went on to get them to where they're at? Do they have any substance abuse challenges, mental health challenges? What is their history? Is their first incarceration? Have they had several incarcerations? What led up to that? A lot of whom we see now is individuals that have been caught up in the opioid epidemic that we're seeing across our country. And very heavily in this county as well. So we work with them on that and work with partners to ensure that those types of services are in place and a part of their reentry plan.
Is your assessment in parallel with, say, the county's psychologist, whoever may be on staff who is making those same assessments, behavioral health assessments, mental health assessments?
So if someone has a mental health assessment that's done with the county personnel, as you stated, that information is not processed on to us.
You have to make your own determination. Is that what you're
We
saying?
do not do diagnosis of mental health. It's self-report. And so if I sat down with you and you said, yes, I was treated for depression at one time, we want to understand when that was. Was it recommended that you continue with medications, that you continue with counseling? And if so, then we're going to talk with you about including that in your plan so that we can help strengthen you so that you'd be the best you can be when you're able to go out and go to work.
And last, describe your success with this population.
Well, we've had great interest. I'll tell you, one of the things that makes a program work like this in the Bedford facility is the commitment of the corrections officers. I mean, we've had them actually want to come out and be at that facility because they see the successes that are happening and the transformation that's happening with the inmates. So we'll serve 200 pre-release, and then as those are exiting, 50% will continue with us for, actually 85% will come for their first post-release engagement. And then of those, there's approximately 50 to 55% that will continue engagement. Unfortunately, as I had pointed out before, a number of these individuals are incarcerated because of their opioid challenges or previous substance issues, and that was related to why they were incarcerated. And unfortunately, sometimes, it's places, people, and things that they return to.
Let me give back what I thought I heard you say about one point. You said you correctional officers want to come to the facility because of the positive work you've done with those.
They believe in the program, and we would not be successful if we didn't consider them a partner. If they didn't feel that this was something that was going to bring change or be help the individuals that were there, we wouldn't be successful. But they're definitely on board, and we have many individuals that go through a culinary training that's also happens at the Bedford facility. So they'll complete that and then engage in our program. So not only can they leave with a credential in Serve Safe food management, but they can also get their start with beginning that look for employment.
So in a way, you've added to the job quality of the correction officers, and that which kind of.
We enjoy, we feel that you can't do anything in isolation. You have to do it in collaboration, and it's very important they're on board. And the staff there works very well with our team, and we really appreciate their support.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
I have a question about the facility at Euclid versus Bedford Jail.
Yes.
Are they duplicative, or are there any amenities at Euclid that Bedford doesn't have, or vice versa?
Euclid is a smaller facility. Bedford is a 200-bed facility, so it can serve more individuals. Euclid is 83 beds. So, no, they all have, very similar as far as the workspace and what can be offered.
So the same offerings, kitchen, training
Yes,
rooms?
kitchen, training rooms.
So you can do everything at either one of these locations?
Yes, and actually, the hope would be that plans could move forward so that the kind of programming we're doing for the male inmates can be replicated for the female inmates, because they're limited here in Cuyahoga County.
Facilities for women are limited?
Not the facilities, but this type of programming. And so the intention was to replicate this and have Euclid become the facility so that women that are serving their time locally could then be at that facility and engage in this type of programming and be better prepared for when they leave.
And you have any other amenities for the women inmates that I envision too, if they're pregnant or needed additional care?
Sure,
you know,
trauma-informed
feminine-
care,
Exactly. Which was the original idea.
Yes.
Behind the Euclid Jail, and you see that would be beneficial because this population now is just intermixed with the general population at the jail, right? Now, downtown?
Absolutely, but it also depends on, I know the jail has different
separate
units.
pod or
Right,
whatever.
separate pods, yes.
But not this full facility for them to
Not for this
prepare.
type.
Correct. Okay.
Ready to start when you are.
Oh, Councilman Jones, follow up?
Have you found that there were times where you were not able to meet with the inmates for, let's say, when there was red zoning had been an issue? Were there times when you would come to provide your service and you were not allowed to meet with them at any
Bedford
times?
or Euclid?
At anywhere? Maine?
No, the only time would be certainly following the rules that if something happened, whether it was at the downtown facility or at the other facilities that required a shutdown, then, we provide by that protocol.
But that had happened at some time, you might
I
experience
mean,
that.
occasionally there may be something, but nothing that's been extremely, or any extreme.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. With no other questions, I'm going to make that same motion since this contract commences 7/1/19 that we move this to the full council with a recommendation for passage under second reading suspension. Do I have a second? Okay, this time we'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this will be on the agenda next week.
Thank you.
Frank, one question. We have a full house, but these programs are different than the educational assistance program that we fund through our general fund college dollars. And would you be in a position to come back? Would it be you that would come and present about the status and update us?
It's odd you said that because we were just talking at House about trying to get on the calendar to give an update where we're at. We have another year of data, so we'd be happy to present.
And how is it going?
It's going very good. Over,
Okay.
I think, 80, don't want to misstate it, but it was like over 80% were completing and getting their credential. I think the placement rate was about 70%. We judge placement, getting a job, not only completing a training, but also getting a job in that area where you were trained. Yes.
All right, so we'll get you on the calendar.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, providers, for coming down. Okay, we're going to move on to, we have a presentation by Invest in Children Universal Pre-K Program. And I think we have Director Rebecca Dorman here.
Sonny, I have to.
Thank you.
If we could.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Rebecca Dorman, Invest in Children, with Shauna Rorman, also Invest in Children. So,
Hello.
yes, so we're going to distribute the PowerPoint and the research that we'll be talking about. I'm going to do with Sean a very quick introduction, and then Dr. Beth Anthony, who is part of our evaluation team, one member of our evaluation team at CASE, is going to actually dive in, and I think Shauna will assist, and I'm going to step back, but I'm always here for questions. So thank you so much for allowing us to come and update you about the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program in Cuyahoga County, which you have been such strong supporters of. We are bringing you good news, and we're actually not asking for money right now, but just want to let you know about the impact that the dollars you've already invested have had. So, just very brief introduction. To remind you that the Universal Pre-Kindergarten model is an enhancement model. So, through an RFP process, we identify sites that already are considered high quality by the state of Ohio in their rating system, but we know that quality can be made even higher if we provide additional funding, training, and technical assistance. And our lead agency who does the technical assistance and training is Starting Point, our regional resource and referral agency for childcare. In addition, we know that it's really important to keep UPK accessible to families across the county of low and moderate means, which is why we do provide scholarships to families in a graduated fashion if their incomes are under 400% of poverty. And it was really important, so that's the general model. But when the model was created, which was about 8 years after Invest in Children came into being, it was really important for the planners, and there was a big community planning process of over a year that happened with many committees, public and private sector involved. National experts were brought in, that the model not just be high quality, but also be accessible. And it was very important that the scholarship piece be there. And we think that it's, made a big difference, as you'll see in a minute. So over time, we've had a pilot study was done early on. A second study was done a few years later, as you can see on the timeline. The program grew a bit. As you know, we really expanded in 2017 with the 10 million new public dollars and then the 12.5 million private that were raised. We obtained a Pay for Success federal grant, which allowed us, in one of the things that the funds allowed us to do was dive in and start the process of a much more rigorous evaluation. Of course, we had many more years accumulated of data. So we're really at a point now that we can do a much better job of telling you about the impact of UPK, and so that's why we wanted to come give you an update. This is not the final word. You'll hear we're continuing to amass data. Further analyses will be coming, but we thought there was enough of a story to tell right now that we wanted to take some time to tell it to you. And I will let Shauna continue with the next slide. Oh, sorry, 70 sites across the county. That's still my slide. So we are all across the county, built on the system of early care and education that exists, which means we have public preschools, we have private community-based schools, we have Head Start sites, and we have 2 family child care homes in the system. That is the preschool system as it currently exists and that we build upon. Now I'm going to pass it over.
Good afternoon. Just really quickly, we thought it would be helpful to show you a comparison of the children who are in UPK compared to children across Cuyahoga County on a couple of demographic and early life experience indicators. So as you can see in the table, UPK is serving a population of children that is almost 2/3 Black and African American, which in comparison to the county is sort of flipped. And at the county level, there are proportionally more white children than are served by UPK. So we are reaching more of the African American children proportionally in UPK. We also wanted to look at SNAP usage as a rough indicator of the socioeconomic status of the children who are in UPK and across the county. What we have here is two slightly different measurements of SNAP usage. The first one is a measure that indicates persistent usage. So this is showing us the percentage of children who have whose family has received SNAP for at least half of their life before the child enters preschool. So if they're entering at age 3, it would be for at least a year and a half. If they're entering at age 4, it would be at least 2 years. So that's a persistent measure that we don't have at the county level, but we do have for UPK children. And then at the county level, what we can see is that 47% of children are in families who received SNAP at any point in the child's first year of life. So not a persistent measure. So we're sort of a little bit comparing apples and oranges, but both figures are really striking when you see that half of UPK children are probably living in persistent poverty, and that almost half of the children in the county are living in families who had to access SNAP at least once in their first year. And then we also wanted to look at the characteristics of the mothers when the child was born. So among the UPK group, 9% of children were born to a teen mom, and 70% of children had a mother with a high school diploma when they were born. The numbers are slightly more favorable when you look at the Cuyahoga County-wide picture of children. So 6% compared to 9% born to a teen mom, and 88% of the children across the county were born to a mom who had a high school diploma at the time of the child's birth. And then the final indicator we looked at was low birth weight, which you can see here that the two groups are similar, if not identical. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth.
Any questions before we begin with that background?
Good afternoon, members of the Education, Environment, and...
Did you have a question? Oh, can you hold on one second,
Yes,
please? There's
of course,
one
I'm sorry.
question.
I have a question about what you said about receiving a federal Pay for Success grant. This is the first I've heard of that. Can you tell me a little bit about when that was received and
Yes.
who funded it and how that's
Sure.
working?
And I left out one important word. It was a feasibility study grant. So we received that 2 years ago? Yeah, 2016, and it was from the Federal Department of Education to look at the feasibility of a Pay for Success funding model for UPK.
And is that still being pursued? What's the status of that?
The good news was that we, part of the grant was to look at outcomes in the most rigorous fashion, because that's the bedrock for any Pay for Success project. So we did that. We looked at potential cashable savings that would accrue to school districts, but at this point we do not have an end payer. And that's the challenge with UPK, is to find the end payer. So no, at this point it has not been, we have not been able to come up with a deal.
Okay, well, it's a complicated model and a lot of pieces have to fall in place for that to work.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. All right. Good afternoon, members of the Education, Environment, and Sustainability Committee. Excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity to present the findings from our evaluation of the county's universal pre-kindergarten program. For the past 18 months, researchers, analysts, and programmers at the Center on Urban Poverty and Community Development have been engaged in an effort to answer a question that we think is of central importance to this committee, and that is the county's investment in UPK having an impact? So to address that question, we explored the impact of UPK participation on educational outcomes that materialize from kindergarten to third grade and that we know are critical markers for longer-term educational achievement and success. Specifically, we're looking at the effect of a high dose of UPK on kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency. And in a few slides, I'll show you how we define those. Before going to the next slide, though, I do just want to say a word about dose. So all of these analyses include children who received a high dose. And we know, because there's already ample evidence, that indicates the amount of preschool a child receives matters a great deal in terms of realizing these benefits. So many studies have already found that 1 full year of preschool before kindergarten, as opposed to something less, or even starting school at kindergarten and skipping preschool altogether, greatly improves children's kindergarten readiness. And now some newer evidence points to the benefits of 2 full years of preschool, so starting at age 3 instead of age 4. In our evaluation, we're going to be looking at both, the benefits of 1 full year as well as 2. Okay. In these analyses, just so I say it right up front and it's very clear, treatment is UPK participation, and our comparison condition would be children who received a high-quality, non-UPK preschool experience. These are children who went to 3, 4, and 5 step up to quality star-rated sites that hadn't gone through the RFP process that Rebecca just described to become UPK providers. And we made this comparison for 2 main reasons. So first, we already know that high quality preschool produces better outcomes for children than lower quality preschool. That's very clear in the research literature. And the second reason is that, as Rebecca mentioned, UPK is an enhancement model. So these existing high quality providers, they elect through an RFP process to become UPK sites. And so for these 2 reasons, the most appropriate test of the UPK model is really to isolate the effect of that enhancement on already high quality providers. And when we do this, it really allows us to address that question about whether UPK does in fact raise quality above and beyond the state's 5-tiered star system. Just a reminder though, Rebecca did mention, so our one of the hallmarks of preschool in our community is its mixed delivery format. So in both of our conditions, children could have attended a public preschool, a private child care center, or a family child care home. So this evaluation really wouldn't have been possible in this time frame and with this scope without the data contained in the Childhood Integrated Longitudinal Data System, which is maintained at the Poverty Center at CASE. For some of you who may not be familiar, the Child System is an integrated data repository. It includes individually identifiable records that are continuously updated on children born since the 1980s in Cuyahoga County who receive service from one of 35 public and nonprofit entities that serve children and families in our community. All of these data are governed by data use agreements, which allow for the legal transfer of these data, and the system is fully governed by the Case Western Reserve University Institutional Review Board. Okay, so the study design, and then we'll get to the results. So just to begin, the study design is slightly complicated, so I will spend a little bit more time here. If you have any questions, please let me know. What we did is we selected a sample of children entering kindergarten in these 6 years, beginning in 2011, going through 2016, in one of 12 public school districts that share data with the child system, and they're represented here on this slide, public school districts included. You can see Cleveland schools share their data with the child system, as do 11 inner ring public suburban school districts. So all of the children who entered kindergarten in those school districts in these years were selected into our sample to start. Then what we did is we needed to attach these children to their educational outcomes that we were interested in. And as I mentioned, we wanted to look at kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency. So as you may be familiar, kindergarten readiness now includes 2 different components, well 4, but we're going to include 2 in this analysis. So the language and literacy subscale, which assesses the degree to which children have developed the pre-literacy skills needed for kindergarten level instruction. This scale is dichotomized according to the state, so we're going to present results by this on-track, not on-track framework, and I can say a little bit more about that in a minute. This framework is predictive of a child's likelihood of passing the third grade reading guarantee. In 2014, so halfway through our kindergarten cohorts here, the state the kindergarten readiness assessment that's mandated by the state was modified to include a social foundations for learning subscale. This is an observational assessment that the teacher administers of each child in their classroom, and it really focuses on those executive functioning skills that are needed for kindergarten level instruction. So things like, can a child follow directions? Are they able to engage cooperatively with their peers? Can they regulate their emotions? So both of those dimensions of kindergarten readiness are included in this analysis, as is third grade reading proficiency. So the first three cohorts, beginning in 2011, at the time of the analysis, they had matriculated to third grade, so we have data on their reading proficiency at third grade. The tricky part here is during this 3-year window, the state changed the assessment that was used. So in order to be able to compare across those groups, we standardized the score. So I'll tell you a little bit more how to interpret the standardized score if you don't already know when we get there. All right, I'm almost done with this slide. And then once we had all of the kindergarten cohorts attached to their educational outcome data, we looked back at these experiences and characteristics that they had since birth. So from birth to kindergarten entry, birth to preschool entry. This slide, matching factors, gives you a sense of the 13 different variables that we were able to use to create a matched comparison sample. So at the child level, things like their gender and age, their elevated blood lead level, these are things that we know impact kindergarten readiness, as are things at the family level, like public assistance receipt, maternal education, and concentrated neighborhood disadvantage. So it was very important that we included a matched comparison because our research question is a causal one. We're trying to isolate and accurately estimate the impact of UPK on our outcomes of kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency. And because children are not randomly assigned to preschool, we had to use statistical techniques in order to make a causal estimate possible. So we had all the background information, we had the academic outcomes. Here's where we assign children to the treatment, which is either, as I mentioned before, UPK or a high quality non-UPK experience. So we're going to be presenting the results from 2 models. Model 1 includes children who got a high dose of preschool in the year before kindergarten. So these are the youngsters that start preschool at age 4. In our analyses, we only include children in that green wedge of the pie chart, the 30% who received a high dose, which we're defining as 9 or more months. This is really a full year of preschool at age 4 before kindergarten. But we also wanted to see what's the benefit of a second full year. So in Model 2, we're looking at children who got 18 or more months of preschool before kindergarten. This is represented there by the 14% in the green wedge. I think one of the first findings from this analysis is that the children in the yellow and red wedges did not get a high dose of preschool or any preschool that we know of at all. And so thinking about ways to ensure that children in our community are going to preschool and are getting a high dose is an important step. All right, so that green wedge in the previous slide is broken down here. So Model 1, that 30% of children who got 9 or more months, this slide shows you what quality of preschool they received. So it's distributed with, sorry, the colors are the 12.6%. So these are the children who got a high dose of UPK in the year before kindergarten. And we're going to draw a comparison from that forest green wedge, which is about 2/3, so 65% of the kids. These are their peers who got a high dose of a high quality non-UPK experience. Model 2, again, this is kids who started preschool at age 3. They got 18 or more months. you can see that roughly the same proportion of children are getting a high dose of UPK, but proportionately half of their peers are getting a high dose of high-quality non-UPK preschool. And we certainly think that as Invest in Children, Starting Point, and Pre-for-CLE continue the important work of raising the quality of lower quality preschool providers, this will become less and less common as families simply have fewer low-quality options to choose from. Okay, the last technical slide is this propensity score matching technique. So as I said, our research question is a causal one, but children aren't randomly assigned to preschool. So we used a matching technique known as propensity score that allowed us to draw from those forest green wedges the most comparable children to use as our comparison to UPK. Those 13 characteristics that I showed you several slides ago about the child, family, and neighborhood characteristics were all thrown into a model, and from it, we selected only those children in the comparison group that looked most similar to UPK kids, except for the fact that they didn't have UPK. All right, the results. Thank you for hanging in there. So all the results I'm going to show are statistically significant. Again, Model 1, 9 or more months of preschool in the year before kindergarten. So our first finding is that the children who received a high dose of UPK scored approximately 4 points higher on the KRA Social Foundation's subscale than their peers, the children in our high-quality non-UPK comparison that got the same dose. So if you remember back, the Social Foundation subscale doesn't have a dichotomous cut score like the language and literacy, on track, off track. So this is just a continuous score. The range is about, I think it's 96. So this is a little bit more than 4 percentage points of an increase for the UPK children after 1 year, a high dose of UPK. When we look at Model 2, kids who got 2 full years, they started at age 3, they got 18 or more months, we see a bigger increase. So these children are scoring 6.8 points higher than their peers who got a high dose of high quality non-UPK experience on the Social Foundation's subscale. So that significant difference after 1 year, the effect size increases after a second year.
So, a question. Am I reading this right, that having 2 years of pre-K as opposed to 1 year of pre-K only made a difference in the UPK group? In the other group, it's 264.58 for one and 264.19 for the other, almost identical.
So to make that comparison, we'd have to have a lower quality group to compare the high quality group to. So with these analyses, we're really just focusing on the benefit of the UPK. I don't know if that 264 is a statistically significant difference compared to the 264.19. I would guess not, but I wouldn't want to say that a second year of high quality non-UPK preschool doesn't matter. We don't have the appropriate comparison to do that.
I'm not sure I follow, because in Model 1, you had high quality non-UPK 264.58. And in Model 2, where they receive the 2 years, high quality non-UPK was 264.19. Assuming the third of a point difference is not statistically significant, it looks like the high quality non-UPK group performed the same, whether they had 1 year or 2 years. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yes, and I think that that is correct, the way that you're interpreting these graphs. But I would say that the research design and the overarching research question weren't set up to answer, I think, the question that you're asking, which is what is the added benefit of a second year of high-quality non-UPK preschool?
Okay.
Councilman Brown?
So just to follow up, are you, because it's a subset in the high quality non-UPK, so there's a much broader population that's not being counted as it relates to what they're learning in their what the first group was learning versus what the second group is learning. So we're not capturing all of the people, essentially. Does that make more sense for you, Councilman Miller? We're not capturing all of Cuyahoga County. We're just capturing a subset that matches up to the students that are most reflective of UPK students.
That's correct.
So within Cuyahoga County, we'll have a much larger concentration of Caucasian students, which might be getting a better quality education than those that are being compared to our UPK students. Then they're not captured in this number. Was that safe to say?
That's correct, yes,
Okay, all
thank
right.
you.
Thank you. And it's even a smaller subset because we're looking at the social foundation subscale
That's
versus the
correct.
literacy. And so this is even a subset of the subset. And,
Yes.
And what is a factor? I don't want to, it's a long day, but what kind of skills or things do they look at for the social foundation?
For social foundations, it's like those executive functioning skills. So can the child follow the classroom rules? Are they able to line up and raise their hand? Are they able to regulate their own emotions? Ask, a trusted adult if they need help, those types of things. Yeah, so that's right. And I think as we continue our evaluation of UPK and we add more and more children, we can begin to answer some other questions that are very important with a broader sample. But you're right, this subscale was introduced halfway through our sample. If it is okay to go on to the language and literacy subscale, because this does represent a larger group, but as you say, Councilwoman, it is still, the comparison is still the most closely comparable children to the UPK analysis. But here we find another statistically significant effect of UPK on being on track for language and literacy at kindergarten readiness. Let me just get to this slide. So a statistically significantly greater proportion of children who attended UPK for 18 or more months scored on track for language and literacy at kindergarten entry. And one way to think about this is that if all children who received a high dose of the high quality non-UPK preschool had instead gotten UPK, we would expect to see that nearly 66% of those children would be scoring on track as compared to 47.2, which is nearly a 19 percentage point increase in the number of kids on track for language and literacy.
So on that, I see that Model 1, there's not a slide for Model 1, so I'm presuming that for Model 1, for the single year, that this item was not statistically significant. Is that correct?
That is correct. We found statistical significance on the social foundation subscale, but not the on-track language and literacy subscale. Okay, and this is our last result. It's also for children who got 18 or more months of UPK. Here we similarly see that these children are outperforming their peers who received the same dose of a high-quality non-UPK experience, and they're doing so at approximately 0.3 standard deviation units. If you're not familiar with standardized scores, which why would you be? The one way to interpret this would be that if the score was 0, both groups would have had the same average. So we would expect 0 would be no difference. The two groups on average would have scored the same. A standard deviation of 0.3 represents a small to medium effect. Unfortunately, we can't really put this back into the raw score units because the tests were switched over the course of the 3 years that we have available to us. But it's a small to medium effect. All right, so.
And
Yes.
what was the level that you acquired for statistical significance?
This is statistically significant at p less than 0.05.
0.05, okay, right.
So this analysis builds on earlier evaluations that Rebecca mentioned. It's the first rigorous assessment of the program's causal impact, and it's allowing us to make a cause and effect statement on UPK's preparation of children for kindergarten and beyond. So results from this evaluation demonstrate that there is room to improve beyond the state of Ohio's 5-star Step Up to Quality system. We found that children who receive a high dose of UPK, and really that 18 or more month is where we're seeing all 3 statistically significant findings, these children are performing significantly better at kindergarten and at 3rd grade than their comparable peers. And it is very important to note that these effects persist after accounting for all of those individual difference variables that we know impact kindergarten readiness and academic achievement throughout their school career. These results also highlight the added benefits of receiving 2 full years of UPK, so starting at age 3 instead of age 4. We know very well that the first 5 years of life are critical for brain development, and given the prevalence of poverty in Cleveland and inner ring suburbs, as Shauna presented, there is great need for programming and services like UPK that prepare children for kindergarten and can counter these effects. However, even with these positive findings, there is still work to be done to ensure that all of our community's children are ready for kindergarten. As Rebecca mentioned, our work continues. We will be exploring further evaluation questions to see if there are subgroups of children for whom UPK is most beneficial. We know resources are not unlimited, and we want to make sure children who need UPK the most can access this service. The results presented here are limited in several ways, and one is the availability of school districts in the child system, but we have great news. We just obtained Parma City Schools, so our work with other school districts continues, and that will only increase the generalizability of our findings. And we're also engaged in a multi-year process evaluation of the UPK program. We want to really understand how this program works. What are those causal mechanisms of change? We have some hypotheses about perhaps UPK providers taking greater advantage of the county's special needs child care program, or the early childhood mental health home visiting program, or perhaps just connecting families to other services needed to meet their basic needs because they're a part of the UPK network. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. The UPK program is making an important contribution to our community, and we thank you for your continued support.
Thank you. Good findings. Any questions? Okay, Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just relative to the age, I'm reminded of the book, The Outliers, where they talk about how some of the parents hold their children back to give them an advantage. So I'm just curious, are we using that 3-year-old and 4-year-old consistently, or is it a 4-year-old who may have had 2 years?
It could be that,
Okay.
yeah. It certainly could be that, but looking at the distribution of children, it is primarily the 3 and 4-year-olds, but that is some children are 4 and 5, and then maybe going at 6. Yes.
Okay, we really appreciate this. I have one question. I heard you say that there'll be less of the lower quality non-UPK sites. Is that because of the state standards?
Yes.
Are shifting?
Yes, and I hope I get it 2020. Is that correct? By 2020, to receive child care subsidies, sites will have to be rated according to the state's Step Up to Quality system. Did I get that right? Okay, yes.
2025?
5, high quality.
High quality. So that's going to be in order to receive the subsidy? Public dollars. So, okay. That's probably going to change a lot of the landscape. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
job, and
Thank you.
we'll be circling back, I'm sure, at some point.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay. Now, on to our voting item. This is, what? One more. Not on that. This is the next item. Really? Oh, because it was pulled off the Board of Control. So, okay, we don't have to vote. All right. So we're going to just come back and say, okay, we're not what do we do? Why are we? Okay, so we're bringing back at least some follow-up on this Resolution A that came from, I think, it was the fiscal agenda. So it just goes back on, right?
It's on the agenda for
For
next.
Tuesday.
For Tuesday.
So we're
yes.
just following up with feedback about some planning. So if we can have just a quick circle back on trees. And Councilwoman Stevens? Yeah, oh yeah. So Councilwoman Stevens was not here to hear the tree issue, but if you could just in a nutshell explain what we're striving for and what the plan is.
Okay. Mike Foley, Director of Sustainability. I'm with Jared Bartley from the Soil and Water Conservation District and Susan Infeld from Planning. We were here 2 weeks ago talking about the proposal, I think so, yeah, proposal to add $1 million a year for expanding and helping create a more healthy tree canopy in the county. You had asked us, so this is on a fiscal agenda, and I think it's back on for Tuesday night, but you had asked us to come back and just walk through the planning process about how we're gonna, the application process, I think. So, so we've had a couple really good discussions. Planning is, Susan is passing out just right now, just kind of the application process that they currently use for the Natural Resources Assistance Council. It's issue 1 money or issue 2 money? Issue 1 money. And we want to kind of follow those, that kind of process that the county planning department has. Planning right now, by the way, is doing an update onto the tree canopy assessment, and I'll walk through that at the end. But we got a quick PowerPoint we can walk through with you. Let's see. So we had a good meeting with the county, the state arborist, who's kind of done a lot of these programs in the past, and he kind of talked through some of the issues that we think we kind of had some concerns about also. But he said one of the things you really want to do is that cities need a good plan, right? So some cities have arborists that aren't urban foresters, and you really need to have. Some cities don't have urban foresters, they don't have arborists, or have anyone kind of on staff who can think about this. So one of the things you really want to do is make some money available for cities or communities that really need to do a solid plan. So to that respect, Soil and Water has, based on his kind of assistance and work, has put together a request for qualifications. That went out yesterday. We'll be getting qualified arborists coming back in that Soil and Water Conservation District will vet and say, here's a good list of, if you want to hire a planner, here's a good list of people who are qualified, that we've kind of qualified and are eligible to be used to do planning services. So that went out yesterday, and it should, I think the results are coming, we've given folks 2 to 3 weeks to come back. To come back in with that. Eligible activities. We're in here, right? Okay. So the eligible activities that we are, at least for this first iteration of the money, will be for planning. So hiring an arborist or hiring an urban forester to help develop a plan. Planting, where community already has a plan in place that makes sense, that money could be made available for that. Maintenance, so a lot of communities need just help pruning and pulling out dead trees and watering and just kind of basic maintenance. One of the things that's really important to kind of tree canopy is that you got to maintain the trees that are already alive and around, and so they don't die. And then also tree supply. So we've had some conversations recently with people who hold an arboretum and some other folks that say, look, we've got a lot of trees we're going to need to be planting in the future. We don't have a kind of readily available supply, and one of the things that we want to think about doing is, can we take saplings and have someone grow them into trees that we can make available for later on down in the years when communities are ready to take these trees and plant them. So that'll be one of the eligible activities that will be made available through the grant. At least for this first year, the max amount would be $50,000 with and we want some skin in the game. So it would be a minimum of a maximum of 5% contribution from communities. Let's see, moving on. So we've also, as I said, we've talked to the state forester who's helped us with this request for qualifications. Application requirements that I think are that we're going to be using that kind of similar to the ones that we've given you are, applicants will have to give us project information, what they're asking us to give them money for. So project timeline, what are the costs, location of the project, the current tree coverage in their community, landscape design, things like that. Current expenses, so one of the things we don't want to do is just supplant communities that already have a tree budget, and so we don't want them to be able to use this money to supplant what they're already spending money on. So we want a 3-year kind of budget from what they've already been spending dollars on for tree planting. If they're going to be hiring an urban forester to help with, kind of this planning process, who that is and what their qualifications are, what their long-term maintenance strategy is, and then we want an annual progress report. So, Soil and Water will help with that, and County Planning will do an annual report back to the community on how the program is running.
Director Foley, and who's going to receive these proposals? What department again?
It'll be coming to the County Planning Department
First.
with Soil and Water and Sustainability, kind of all, it'll be like what we're thinking about right now is like kind of a 9-person board that would take the applications and review. And so planning would have 3 people, we would have 3
Okay.
people, and Soil and Water would have 3 people.
Who would be the eligible applicants? Would it be municipalities? Would it be CDCs? Would it be nonprofits? Would it be all of the above?
Councilman, it would be all of the above. So we could have a nonprofit that could come in and work with, maybe just a section of a community, so any of those entities.
Okay.
And then we just have we have a rough timeline of when we think that, our goal is to get money out by mid-September, right? So we want to be able to take advantage of the tree planting season. Planting should happen, in kind of October and in November, basically. You shouldn't go past probably Thanksgiving in terms of doing planting. So we want to make sure the money's out on the, kind of out in the streets so that communities can take advantage of it this year. So we've got at least a timeline on when we think dollars could be available and when applications would have to come in. And then lastly, as I said, planning is doing, they've done the tree canopy assessment already. The data is starting to come in, and I don't know if you want to talk about this. We just got this in yesterday, basically. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that the manual that was handed to you by me represents the Ohio Public Works Commission Clean Ohio Green Space Conservation Program. But I want you to look at the completeness of that application, the types of questions that are being asked of applicants to get the sense of how this program will be developed so that money will be distributed after people supply that type of information. That some of that information or some of the questions being asked in that application might be not applicable to this program, but it isn't going to be just a couple of questions. We're really going to vet the types of projects and make sure that they have the capacity to get this done. So that I just wanted to mention that first. And then in terms of this this slide that you're looking at right now, this is showing tree canopy loss in the very preliminary raw data that is coming back with the current year's tree canopy assessment. And so as you look at the red dots, that's showing more than an acre of lost trees. Some of this is due to development, but it's other reasons too. So it really hits every area of the county and also the city of Cleveland.
I think that's it.
Council President Brady.
Director Foley, I was just curious. I think I heard you guys mention last time, in passing at least, what's the organization, Striving Communities? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. For several years, of course, they've been, promoting this concept of a canopy, and I know that they've done some planting, although I don't have just know what I read in the paper about it. But is there, how does this fit in with that? Is there some coordination? You know,
No, and look, and Jim Rokakis, who's part of the Striving Communities, has met with us on a number of occasions and urging us to, take up trees as a thing that the county should be spending money on, and he's meeting with other folks as well. So I think they are really Western Reserve Land Conservancy and Strident Communities, right? Is that are in one sense trying to organize kind of the other players in the field, to spend dollars or raise dollars for other efforts to do tree planting, and I know they've had a lot of conversations, but we're working with them.
You're continuing to have
Yes.
communication with them. I mean,
Sure.
they've been working on that for several years, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair, Director, the schedule that you put out said June 18th issue initial RFP. Did that actually take place yesterday?
That is correct. The RFQ for the urban foresters to develop that list of qualified urban foresters was published yesterday.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. With no further questions, I appreciate you coming back with such a specific plan, and we will have this on the agenda for Tuesday. Okay, thanks, and we can adjourn the meeting. I don't think there's any new business, so we're adjourned. Thank you.